Congressman Jeff Fortenberry really has Haiti under his auspices. House Appropriations Committee is another one of his committees that he's involved with. And, of course, he's no stranger to KLAN listeners and KOIL listeners, COIL listeners over in Nebraska. Congressman, welcome back. What could you tell us about this assassination?
Well, thank you, Brian. It's shocking. It's stunning. I've met with President Moïse a few years back. I've been to Haiti several times. It's an important part of our foreign affairs considerations. He was on the road of some types of reforms. There were questions about the extension of his power and what he was doing in that regard. There was some consideration that criminality and gangs and business relationships with criminality and gangs, people that he was trying to perhaps take on and reform, that there was an animus there. But we just don't know the real reasons behind this, the full reasons. But in reality, Haiti, it just can't seem to escape the structural poverty, natural disasters, and this explosive cycle of violence that has racked that country since its beginning. It's really heart-wrenching.
It really is. And considering the Dominican Republic is the other side of it, and they were able to get by and do quite well, it knows the potential is there, right?
It's a country with huge potential, and yet there's so many setbacks. It's a country of real contradictions, if you will. There's a real pride of culture and a notion of nationalism that's very, very healthy. And yet structural poverty, crime, violence, corruption, instability in governance, foreign manipulation, all of these things have led to the conditions that we have. But it needs to be noted as well that it really is amazing to me the number of church groups and youth groups throughout America have relationships with churches and youth groups in Haiti. So there's a deeper issue here other than just it being a strategic partner in our neighborhood, a recipient of charitable impulse of American aid. There's lots of relationships between Americans and Haitians.
Well, that's true. Actually, the First Lady of Haiti is struggling for her life. She was hit. The son, I guess, was okay. So we'll see what happens there. Is it true that the assailants pretended to be U.S. agents?
I'm reading what you're reading in that regard. I did speak to our ambassador last night, who I have ongoing dialogue with about the country. We just don't have any additional information. It seems to be correct that they posed. I did listen to that one video that they posed as DEA agents, but where they're coming from, I don't have any additional information.
So just another part of the thing, of just looking at your Twitter feed, you talk about China. And now there's movement. I didn't even know. China's able to buy farmland in America. What are you guys doing in the House and the Senate to stop that? Doesn't seem like a healthy thing to be our number one enemy and adversary and rival, to be able to buy up our farmland that's feeding the country.
I'm really happy you raised this. I'm what's called the ranking member of the Agricultural Subcommittee on Appropriations. This was an amendment that came up last week, actually, to prohibit the Chinese government from owning farmland in America. And there was a little bit of debate that went back and forth on it. We actually passed the amendment, but I posed the question, could an American farmer go buy farmland in China? Could an American corporation buy farmland in China? Could the U.S. government buy farmland? I don't know, but I guess the probability of that is as close to zero as possible. We have very unequal systems and an unfair trading regime that has developed between China and America. They have lax labor standards. They have lax environmental standards. The infectious lust for profiteering by multinational companies shifted our manufacturing there. They make the stuff, we buy the stuff. They have our cash, we run up debt, they buy the debt. It's a very dysfunctional marriage that we have. And frankly, one way out of this is that everybody just looks on the label and starts buying made in the USA. That's the best thing that I can recommend.
True, Congressman, but it's also true that we don't make much stuff here because most of our businesses thrive because we're able to manufacture cheap and still import it and still have cheaper prices. We have to do something on the manufacturing level to incentivize things being built here, whether it's getting additional workers, skilled workers, or make it more affordable. I don't know if that's possible. Do you?
It does need a decided consensus and a concerted effort, a national type of effort in that regard. I'll give you a small example. One of my kids has a car with 200,000 miles on it. We pushed the tires as far as they could go. I went to buy some new tires. The Chinese tires were $470. The American tires were $580. So for most people, that's a big gap.
Huge.
I did buy the American tires. I bought the American tire, but why is that a gap? Well, the economic libertarian type of mindset will be, will they manufacture more efficiently? Well, again, there's different sets of standards. If you live in Beijing, it takes 5 years off of your life because the pollution is so bad. We have environmental standards here. We have labor standards here. We don't repress religion here. We don't repress religious minorities here. There are very different systems here, and we want to ignore that for the sake of cheap goods. It's hollowing out America, and it has to stop.
Absolutely, and I can see if we could just educate the country, the patriotic fiber in our bodies would do that and bring people in the right direction without saying Democrat or Republican. Congressman Jeff Fortenberry is our guest. Congressman, I'm just really concerned. Many people are tired of this war in Afghanistan. Well, that's fine. Does anybody want this outcome that we're seeing right now, a basic handover to Islamic fundamentalists, when an outpost that we spent $87 billion on, we handed over to the Afghan forces with hours' notice that was looted last night? So here's John Kirby on the situation on the ground, cut 24.
We are all concerned about the security situation on the ground, Neil. There's no question about that, which is all the more reason why we continue to push for a negotiated, peaceful, political settlement to this war. That's really the way forward here. We've said for a long time a military solution is not going to be in the best interest of the Afghan people.
I mean, that's just a waste of time. The Admiral knows it. They're not speaking. They're winning. The Taliban is just taking up the real estate, and it's going to be within 6 months they take Kabul. Are we okay with that?
I'm highly conflicted, I'm sure, as you are, as sure as most policy members are. We can't continue in endless wars, yet to think that we're going to negotiate with people who are going to outright lie to you is naive and destructive. If you look at the circumstances in Iraq, it might provide a better model, but I think we're past that. We basically withdrew but created a residual force strength there that's very quiet. Aggressively trained the Iraqi military. They took on ISIS. They defeated ISIS. We were in the background providing leadership and logistical and supply support, but it worked. So that country is, I'm hoping, continues to turn the corner and develops stability, a healthy sense of nationalism, a pluralistic character that used to exist there, and then that can continue to help Iraq enter into the community of responsible nations in much better shape. In Afghanistan, what a horrible conflict because of the reasons that you just said. We can't stay there forever, but to watch it crumble after all the lives that have been lost, plus the billions that have been spent, it's heart-wrenching. The country is obviously going to probably get divided up and maybe revert back to where it was with some type of northern alliance that might be more amenable to alliances with us and others. We do have the capability, if a terrorist type of threat is going to possibly come from there to hit us like it did in 9/11, to go in there surgically. That's the best I can tell you, Brian.
Congressman, the one thing, nothing you said was inaccurate, but I also think the mindset could be different. I see a base in between Iran, China, and Russia while keeping an eye on ISIS and al-Qaeda. And the Afghanistan government gradually being defunded to a point where they can stand up on their own. We leave enough contractors in there to help use their Air Force and repair their Air Force that we built and gave to them. But right now we pulled everybody out immediately. The way we dismount has everything to do with our national interest. I'm not talking about an endless war because only 2 people have lost their lives in 2 years. We've lost more in domestic military accidents at home.
Yeah, and there it is, the conflict, and the reason I gave you the Iraq example. Residual force strength pushes the Afghans out front, provides logistical and air support as well as leadership so that there can be some possibility of them emerging stronger. That would be the better option.
Absolutely. Here's the other thing. We've got about 9,000 people that have helped us in the past. Cut 26.
So
Michael
we have
Wolf.
to send our special operators back in to take care of this problem, like we did when Obama pulled out of Iraq too soon and it led to the rise of ISIS. The difference in Afghanistan is they're going to have no bases. We have no bases in the region, and they're going to have no local allies. Who would trust us again? Who would stand with us again after they've been abandoned? And Dana, you know my own personal story that I had one of my interpreters that was found by the Taliban with the documentation he needed to prove that he worked with America. They took him back to his village, beheaded him, his brothers, and his cousins. They have a bullseye on their back. They're being hunted down as we speak, and the White House is doing nothing about it.
They just don't care. I just don't get it. This is the one Trump policy. They feel powerless to reverse. Are we buying that?
Yeah, in fact, when I was early in Congress, I created a special visa immigrant program for those indigenous people, particularly in Iraq, but also in Afghanistan, who stood by our soldiers, who risked their own life, whose families are still at risk, to be able to come to America and rebuild. It's only fair that we provide that type of support to them. It's only fair. I know that's delicate and nuanced and difficult to hear, but it's only fair. At the same time, though, not abandoning the situation completely, not hollowing out expertise in people who actually do have military capacity there and giving them the support they need while continuing some step down, gradual pullback is the best answer.
Congressman Jeff Fortenberry is here. Congressman, lastly, there's an infrastructure bill that's bipartisan. It's about $1 trillion, $560 billion new dollars, and then repurposing pandemic money. They could get back to the House that was put forward to the Senate. Of course, they got to vote it through the Senate. Is that something that you would support as you understand it?
Well, this is floating all over the place, Brian. And the early part of this negotiation had infrastructure being defined as child care. Look, when you talk about infrastructure and you mean real projects on the ground, roads, bridges, airports, things that help with commerce and economic vitality and people's well-being, people will pay tax money for that. You see it on a local basis when you actually have a bond issue and you want to build something specific. People will vote an increase of taxes for that. But when you expand the definition of infrastructure to include every conceivable ideological thing that you want to concentrate in the hands of the federal government, that undermines the ability to be bipartisan in the first place, and that's where we're at. So a good, solid, working infrastructure bill has a possibility of getting through Congress, and we should pass something through like that. But if it's loaded up or used as leverage for a reconciliation package that would push through, again, the ideological agenda of the administration with no bipartisan support, we can't be used like that.
I hear you. Let's see what comes back across. And the other big issue, of course, is crime in America. I don't really think it's overrunning Nebraska, but it is overrunning major cities in this country. And I think the Democrats are beginning to realize the American people are outraged by what they're seeing. Instead of police reform, this thing has reversed. Do you agree?
Completely. Look, the first principle of government is to keep you safe, protect your life. And I understand in California, if you steal less than $1,000, you're not going to be arrested. You're not going to be pursued. Well, you know, persons aren't angels. There's a reason that we have law. You want people to choose the right thing for moral reasons because they're acting in virtue for their own good and for their neighbor. But when that doesn't happen, you have to enforce a principle, which is you will respect your neighbor and your neighbor's property. And when you lose that because of some idea that the police have somehow created an environment which is creating crime, this is a result. It's completely twisted logic. Look, in Nebraska, I used to be on the city council here in Lincoln, and we reinforced and backed up the movement toward community-based policing. The police officer is in dialogue and relationship with the people that he or she serves. She or he is an intermediary when there's a crisis problem, but also has enforcement capability when something goes wrong. I was shocked, frankly, after the George Floyd's death, that many police departments don't have this model. It's the right way to move forward, but you cannot leave enforcement off the table. Ultimately, that is the necessary tool to keep persons who are doing bad things in line. And you're seeing this crisis play out in California. I'm sure you saw that video where the guy rides a bike into the Walgreens and just steals stuff, and the security guard, all he can do is videotape him. Then yesterday in some store, people were running in and out with purses. I mean, that doesn't happen in Nebraska, thankfully, but we have a good, solid police force.
Yes, you do.
Good citizenry, yes, who want to be in dialogue with police officers. But if something goes wrong, they will enforce the law. Period.
In San Francisco, you could steal up to $950 worth of merchandise without them pressing charges, and they're told not to pursue it. It's a joke. Congressman Jeff Fortenberry, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian.
You got it.